then I'm more economic.
Great. Then we can call the meeting to order. And conflict of interest declarations. Al? None. 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 Okay. None. So we get that one covered. Great, Peter, welcome. How about phones off, just as a reminder? Do we have everyone set up if they do have a comment up here? Okay, all good. We'll go to the consent agenda. And before I even entertain a motion, you have the floor as always.
Well, we are on budget with both operating expenses and a little above on operating revenue, so we're moving along according to budget. So there's no surprises. The only thing that I need to bring to the board's attention is the audit report today. Matthew Cope with Holmes and Turner will be on the agenda later to present the 2023-2024 audit report. And that's for the board to either accept or reject. But I believe it's a clean audit report, so we'll see it a little bit later.
Okay. That being said, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Motion for the consent agenda. Motion to approve by Dick, second by Peter. Any discussion, questions for Terry? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. What about Schropp? Do we have him in there? We got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're only missing Schropp today. Okay, we'll go right into committee reports. I will say a couple things about committee reports today. We'll have Mace on old business, and he'll have a report and an update. And then Susan, are you on?
I am.
Okay, we're going to address that issue we discussed this morning during old business, and we'll be looking for a motion on some needs for the Gallatin Canyon sewer district, water sewer district. So just as a quick overview, there was a meeting last week. Al and Jared, any comments from you on the meeting last week, or you just want to have Mace kind of cover everything in detail?
Yeah, I think that'd be more efficient.
Yeah. Okay, great. How about compliance committee?
Okay, you got an update for the trucking along.
Okay,
Are we doing pretty good on the
it's gonna be some time to kill before Ron's lunch today, I think.
yeah, it's all going good?
Yeah.
All right, nothing from the compliance committee. Johnny, anything in the policy benefits budget, CIP?
Yeah, we've met, everything's good. You see in the action item to adopt the updated and amended policy and procedure manual. Pretty happy with it. I think everybody is on board with it. No issues there. And then adoption of our first official safety manual. And the safety committee has been formed. They'll meet in January. Start going over this, and we'll start implementing a whole new safety program in the district. So,
Those were impressive documents.
a lot of work.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Flatiron. Chris, we talked briefly, just for transparency, I think, Chris, maybe you just let people know and everyone attending that what the plans are with Flatiron. Talk about it. You're kind of waiting. We'll see a few of these move through the system. Any updates from you?
Nothing major, but we will put our application for annexation.
Great.
Where do you guys stand with the company now? We extended the PED, so we've got another 7 years on top of what we have before, so basically 10-year term. We're not doing anything in Madison County right now, so just working on Gallatin County specifically and starting to do some engineering and trying to get everything in the right place to move forward.
Okay. And there are how many conditions?
64. I mean, not that I remember.
But who's coming?
Yeah, exactly.
How you coming with them? Just everyone here. It's always good to put them on the table, so there's,
I think we're coming pretty well. I mean, it's a slow process. Everybody in this room knows. Some of them are harder than others. Some of them are no brainers. Some of them are easy. I think probably the next step will be subdividing the property, and that's, we gotta do that right, and thoughtfully, and how to phase it properly. So, I mean, just the normal, how to work through the development, how to do it right, how to learn from what's already been done. But we're feeling good about
yeah. I think most importantly, for everyone here, we're in a really complicated time. I think probably as complicated as I've ever seen it. You've got two annexation agreements, and that's why I kind of put you on the spot and said, I got a feeling we'll have 3 here in a hurry, maybe 4, all the annexation agreements that are coming in. So we have Spanish Beach, Cold Smoke, Flatiron, got the Canyon, that's going to be a lot of discussion. And how to deal with some of the things, housing trust, not just Cold Smoke, how all this is going to blend together. The next 2 meetings are going to be critical as we try to understand this and work our way through the red lines, the legal recommendations. Susan has been all over it. Had a good committee meeting on Friday just to try to sort through some of the responses to the responses to the responses. And I would just say again, for the next meeting in particular, really, John, if you can get that board packet out a little earlier, you're going to have a general manager's report on some of these subcommittees. We'll try to put those together. Maybe we have a brief subcommittee on Flatiron to understand if you're going to get that application in here as well, so we can look at this comprehensively. You know, when you start getting a lot of these coming at you, again, the conditions are so unique on each one. Dick and I just talking as refreshers, which one provides their own water, which one doesn't, which one does this. So the next month's going to be key. And there's a January 2nd ISRAD workshop. And that's specific for us to some of the needs that we got to work on data with. And it's going to be a lot of moving parts. What's up?
So we've been kind of trying to time it because we would love to see kind of what's being proposed for Spanish Beach. So we've kind of been waiting on that annexation agreement that Susan's been working on for Spanish Beach.
Sure.
Just to kind of see what the template is. As you mentioned, there'll be a bunch of things that you'd work through with anybody that was applying for annexation.
Good morning.
I think we're to see that.
And, you know, I think at this point, it's been a whole lot of reading, because I said earlier, going back and forth. I think the best thing would be to see, you know, what comes out of the next meeting. I think we're probably going to have consensus on a number of topics. That'll streamline it for you. So just be thinking about it. And yeah, I think that it's going to be good to address these comprehensive. It's a little overwhelming for some of them.
And we have Firelight getting in the blocks too.
Firelight in the blocks. Yeah, they're coming back to the table again. They're going to go for another vote.
That would be me.
It would have to be in the site. So yeah, it's an active time. Just as we finish up the plant, now we've got a lot of other things going. So any questions for committees or anything moving forward? All right. Then we'll go into the audit report.
All right, well, Matthew Cope is online and he prepared the 23-24 audit report for us. And if you can go to the financial section and pull up that audit report, or you. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for having me. My name is Matthew Cope. I'm a shareholder at Holmes and Turner over in Bozeman. We have wrapped up the audit for Big Sky Water and Sewer for fiscal year 24. I'll be pretty quick here. Just want to thank the staff and Terry for pulling everything together and having everything ready for us when we came out. It made it quick and easy. On that end of the audit, we just always get a little bit backed up here in the office, just with bottleneck of engagements that kind of keep this on the back burner for a little bit. So, but we've got the final.
Muted yourself.
From my
Um,
end, he froze.
And can everybody hear me?
We're losing you.
How about now?
We hear you now.
Okay. So we issued 2 audit reports. This first audit report is a clean opinion. That's on the financial statements and the presentation in accordance with GAAP. That is the best opinion you can receive. The second audit report that we issued is the Yellow Book report for government auditing standards and compliance. That's on page 48 in the back. That is also another clean opinion. We did not have any internal control deficiencies that we identified that needed to be addressed by management. We had no disagreements with management. Pretty similar to years past. No significant accounting changes. Were there any questions from the board over the financial statements?
I have one, and it's kind of unusual, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. When we specifically, our legal fees, are those lumped into the professional fees?
Yes. No, well, there's on the financial statements that are prepared for the audit, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm wondering, would it benefit us as an organization to break those out? So our ratepayers, members of the community can see clearly in the audit how much we've spent defending this district against lawsuits, successfully defending this district against lawsuits.
It's a good
It's
point.
a question,
Good suggestion.
kind of more for discussion than you can see what my opinion kind of is, but I wonder if that would.
Al, if you asked the question, someone else, I'm sure would like to know the answer in the community of saying, how much are we spending with legal? When you say professional, I think it would be great to have that line item.
Is that an easy change, and could we?
Well, the audit report hasn't been submitted to the state yet, so that's a question for Matthew. Can you pull out the legal fees on that presentation and have them updated?
Yes, sorry, you broke up a lot. I don't know what's going on with my internet. So I think I got the gist of it. You just want to break out the legal fees within each section. So water, sewer, and general and admin.
You can just leave it under the general admin.
Okay.
The legal
Yep.
fee.
Yeah. That's easy enough.
Yeah, I think, because right now it's legal and engineering in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be
Definitely.
helpful for us to break that out, so it's easy for a reader to know how much money we've spent.
And it'll serve a dual purpose, Al, because you can't really control your legal fees. You can do your best, but you can't control your legal, you can't control your budgeting and professional fees. And if you find yourself maybe getting over the top on a budget of professional fees, we can revisit and try to work on those. Legal fees, you just got to get the best you can. So one's controllable, one's not.
That's the only comment I had.
Okay, so Matthew, if you can update that, I'll redistribute to the board a copy of the audit report.
Sounds good. I will do that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nice job, Jerry.
All right.
If it's on the jail, we can.
Anything else from you, Terry, on that then? I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit report.
So moved.
Second,
Second with Dick.
and I'll second what Al asked on the legal fees, because
That's great.
we brought that up a number of times here, how much we were.
I think the community should know it.
Yeah.
That's really the best point. So, okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Terry
Matthew.
And
Thank
Matthew.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next business action item, District Amended Policy and Procedures Manual and Appendices. I bet you want to celebrate that as well today.
I do,
So there's a toast to Ron, there's a toast to that for you, I'm sure.
yeah.
Okay, any discussion on this?
I'll let the committee members speak on it, what they think.
It's great. I think you have an updated, document that kind of defines what it means to be a part of the district. And I think you did a great job pulling it together.
It's extensive.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think there was a lot of effort, a lot of discussions some of them challenging discussions. And I think the group worked through that. This group, not Mike and I, we just listened afterwards, but we worked through that and got us to a place where we've got a good document and a strong benefit structure.
Yeah, it was, communication always has its challenges and stuff and, change is not always easy for a group. But, understanding that, there's some much needed updates and housekeeping and setting ourselves up for the future and the standards and stuff. So I'm definitely happy with it. It took 2 documents, merged them into one, got consistency. These are documents that have been around for 30 years. So, but the organization growing and stuff. So it was definitely a lot of work and a lot of regrouping and coming back and going back and forth with the team and making sure it was equitable and not unbearable to enforce and to follow and stuff. So I think everybody's pretty pleased with it.
You said it best, structure and change isn't always easy. It can be a challenge, challenging, but I think it's necessary and probably a little overdue. So thank you all. I know you had a lot to do with it as well. Any other discussion, questions? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the district amended policy and procedures manual and appendices.
I'll make that motion.
Dick made the motion.
I'll second.
We got a second with Peter. It's a race on you.
It's a race.
You did your time down on this. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried again unanimous. Great. Adopt this district safety manual.
This also was a fun document. I kind of kept it close to the chest of the safety program. And all the ones I've ever dealt with, safety culture comes from the top down. So you have to walk it, live it, breathe it, becomes part of the culture. As you look through that document, there's 30 individual chapters. And each has a purpose and a definition. But it truly will be a team effort. We did have some guidelines, believe it or not, in our policy and procedure manuals that alluded to a committee. The safety manual also alludes to that same committee. The plan is that the safety committee is made of financial because of the insurance, district clerk for HR purposes, the 3 superintendents, and then 2 employees at large. To make a committee is 7. I am not on this committee because I will be taking recommendations from the committee to update the manual and also enact or enforce any disciplinary actions that come out of it. The committee will review all incidents and will also appoint a health and safety advisor that will ensure that all legs of the administration and the district are following the policies and procedures and the employee handbook and also the safety manual. So big changes and big changes with all the contractors and stuff that we work with to bring us up to speed with the new plan and all that stuff. So a lot of time and effort is going into this and we'll continue to do so and shape how we do business.
Okay. Questions? Another one down. Checking a lot of boxes this morning. Great. I'll entertain a motion on the district safety manual adoption.
Make the motion.
Peter.
District safety manual.
Okay. Second by Dick.
Mike was so quick last time, I was a little gun shy.
Yes.
Everybody take their turn now. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Great. Carried unanimously. Well, Dick, I think in our, I don't know, 11 or 12 years, just about everything is unanimous. We've only had a couple that weren't. That's what's interesting.
There's more than I remember.
I know you do. Next time I'll keep it quiet. All right. Next up, this is cold smoke annexation petition. Okay. Want to give a little summary on that?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of talking, but the board has not actually officially accepted the petition, and staff is making recommendations to accept and to move into the annexation agreement phase of the petition, same phase that we're currently in with Spanish Peaks. So we want to get that accepted and be able to move forward with the negotiations of it. Appreciate everybody's patience. Again, all of these petitions they're all unique. They all have their own items and steps that we've got to go through. So conditions. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. So, you know, for me, I'm looking at the forest while I'm standing in the forest. So, you know, to be able to keep things separated, that, you know, I'm doing stuff over here and over here and over here and over here. And then trying to keep everybody else on the same page too, is a little bit of work, but we're working through it. And then of course, you know, these are agreements, so they go back and forth and until we get them 100% to bring forward for, you know, ordinance, and stuff. So appreciate the time and effort that everybody and the quick responses that, you know, we're starting to move this forward. I know on Spanish Peaks, that one's been going for a while. I've been here for almost 18 months. And, you know, just to get it to this next phase, you know, it takes a little bit, but they're starting to stack up. I got 2 more on my desk. I think we got 3 in queue and 1 more coming. So, and then we got Firelight and all that stuff that's hanging out there too. So got a lot.
If you did a year in review and you had a title, you might have annexation as the #1 phrase used. Annexation has just been amazing. So I think this is, I just want to make it clear, this is accepting the annexation petition and all the paperwork's in on that. And that will open the door to step up the negotiation a little stronger. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah, Brian, I do have one question. I think the status of the agreement or the agreement that's being negotiated was provided in the packet as well, or was that provided separately?
Just the petition and the legal review.
This is Susan. Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Please do.
Al is correct. There was a draft annexation agreement included with my letter because I am suggesting to you that you can go ahead and proceed with accepting this petition. Part of accepting the petition for annexation is that you need to begin thinking about the process of annexation, which puts you into that, do you have capacity? And because this is presented with using the, I'm going to call them the Housing Trust SFEs. I don't think that's quite technically correct, but I think that's how we all know them. Because this is using the Housing Trust SFEs, that changes how you think about accepting the petition and processing the annexation. And so that draft has been presented. It went to BizRad. I anticipate that there are going to be comments, edits, and changes coming back. It's always a negotiated documented annexation agreement, but I wanted you to see my thought process on how you get to accept the petition, because these are already committed SFEs through the Housing Trust.
Great comment, Al. Thanks for addressing it. I do want to be clear. There's been a couple rounds of red lines. So I think that this is the most important part. As I said earlier, the next 30 days, the next meeting is going to be important. And we have red lines on red lines at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we have a meeting summary from the other day. And we're trying to look at, again, although each is unique and with the conditions, we have to have a consistent checklist or pattern that we're using across the board. There has to be a consistency to this annexation. So I would say this, what you have in your packet with the red line, if there aren't red lines on red lines, we need to get the update for the next meeting so everybody's in a clear understanding to move forward with this. Because there's some things, great point there about you either have to have that excess capacity or you have to identify where the SFEs are coming from. So with that annexation agreement in particular, there was some redlining that was more specific if it falls through. So then it kind of trips you back into, well, where are the SFEs coming from? We don't have excess capacity. And then it trips you into the voting procedure. So again, we just have to look at these all together, but understand they're unique in nature across the board.
So is there a committee per se that's working on this back and forth? Or I'm just trying to understand how it gets from where it is now to eventually a board decision.
It's a committee of two, and that's Gina and Susan right now with the leadership of Johnny. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah.
I know you're trying to volley these back and forth. And I think the most important thing is that we have to stay in our lane as far as the ordinance goes and how we handle each one of these.
So at some point, Johnny, you'll be coming to the board with an agreement that you in theory, recommend that we agree.
Yeah, all this stuff will have staff recommended. This is a little bit different in Spanish Peaks. It doesn't have a specific committee for it.
Right.
You know, the Spanish Peaks Committee was around before I started.
And I'm not suggesting the idea.
Now, you know, what are you doing on Thursday?
Because then as soon as I say that, you're sucked in. But I just wanted to make sure it was clear in my head, maybe some of the other board members will wonder too, how it'll eventually get to the point where we.
It's a great question, and I believe it's been with legal, and we're looking for a legal opinion. We're looking for a legal opinion on how to even accept it, given some of the terms and conditions that were in there. And it really opens your eyes to how we got to look at every one of these specifically. It's a checklist.
Yeah, and Susan, thanks for including it, because it was helpful to at least have kind of a glimpse of where we are now.
Yeah.
And marginally terrifying for you to start thinking about how I think.
Did you hear that in my voice?
Susan was up and at it early this morning after a harrowing day yesterday. Okay, anything else on it? Dick?
So I think the challenge here will be to get all the board members up to speed on how the negotiations at work, what the key issues are. Because there's probably 2 or 3 issues in those drafts that are bouncing back and forth. So I think we need the input from all the board members as to what they think and their positions on those issues.
I think, and you're 100% correct, and that's where I started earlier saying, Johnny, there's going to be a lot of pressure on you and getting that packet out early. And I think it will be best if legal can basically clear out anything that's not consistent with it. If we can't accept terms in the annexation agreement as it's been redlined today, and there are a couple things that Susan, you've mentioned, we need to either eliminate those or put a big red flag in those going to the board and give an opinion on them. So the goal would be Susan and legal have an opinion on those terms and conditions. Johnny gets back, gets a little extra time for us. And that was my point earlier. A lot of board packets, we're able to read them at about 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning. This won't be one of those board packets, and there'll be some chatter, I think, going back and forth. And not just the housing trust. We're going to have that workshop with BizRad on the 2nd, and I'll be stepping in for Johnny on that one, but then I'll do a summary, and we want to make sure that the board understands how that works with BizRad, what the commitments are with the housing trust and the budgets and the canyon. So again, board packet it'll be loaded. But I think we're actually making progress across the board. Great question.
And if I read it correctly, the timeline seems to be just having that we need to have the first reading prior to that May vote. Because the second reading is somewhat impacted by the result of the May vote.
Yes. Yes, you had mentioned
So
that. I
given
didn't quite get it.
timeline, we're in decent shape, being that it's December and we can get
So
to that point.
Let's talk about it. So, and Susan, correct me if I'm off on this at all. You got a lot of redlining going back and forth on the housing trust. We clear the way on what we can consider for a vote, what we can and what we can't. We put that on the sideline, or what we need to adjust. We potentially could move on that agreement at the January meeting. Potentially, if we have an agreement that's close enough, we can move on. Does that kind of make sense? Would we have our first reading at the February meeting? Would that get us out of the way with the first reading?
Possibly. I mean, we could do it February, March, or even April
Yeah.
for the
I would-
first reading.
Yeah.
We
So-
don't have to have an agreement before the May election.
In a first reading.
In a first reading.
First reading, but
So we have, I was trying to identify the margin for negotiation. So I just, for you, David, I'm sitting there saying, all right, if we can't come to an agreement, if we can't vote on an agreement at the January meeting, we still have the opportunity to do it at the February meeting and have our first reading at the March agreement. So it's getting tighter. But I think the cleaner the legal team gets this, the easier it's going to be for us. A lot of these terms and conditions are just, we can't accept. I mean, we just can't within the annexation process. Does that make sense?
But it gives us some flexibility, that if there's something we can't all agree on.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity.
I was trying to push it into April. I just want to get an idea that if we did this, so it really motivates everybody to step up and clean it up. That's all.
we got a lot of homework to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting one to review, especially when you have new ones coming to the table. And you're gonna have 4.
Yeah.
Good
Tell
news
me
with,
they're coming.
The good news with the housing trust, it's not a flow-based agreement, it's SFEs. So we don't have to deal with those percentages and triggers moving forward. It's a little tighter than the Spanish Peaks. But yeah, still got to work in the same guidelines. Okay. All right. How about a motion to accept the application for the coal smoke annexation petition?
I'll make a motion to accept the application.
Okay. Second from Jerry. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Great. All right. Scott, it's showtime. Got Mace on?
He's 30 minutes out. That was at 8:08. He's in the canyon.
I can jump up, I can get my 1-minute update.
We actually have an action item now on a vote.
As far as the plan goes, we're in past milestone 2 now. Biosolids are started up. And final punch listing, Trent Dykstra House with RSCI is here today. Might be the last time we've seen him. I don't know how punch listing goes. And of course, Adam's here too. The biggest items left are the generator. So the generator was fired up. The automatic transfer switch. Generator worked fine, is my understanding. The automatic transfer switch has some programming glitches that they're working on.
Screen having glitches, so it's just a backup power source that they'll make a connection on, really minor item, but it fires and transfers. Then, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but
Yeah, James isn't comfortable putting it in play yet.
Yeah.
So that's squared away, but
so they had a call yesterday, but yeah, that generator will be online. Perfect straight this week.
So the generator, hydro seeding, which obviously can't take place till spring. Some painting that can't take place till spring, a lot of punch listing that can be done in the next 2 weeks. You still have the pontoon clean out that we're gonna figure out this summer. That's part of that project and part of that financial note. And you also have the dewatering project that was split out. You have a centrifuge that's arriving in, I believe, March. And we want to get that installed eventually, but not part of the RSCI's contract. Barry, anything to add on finances? We got all
No,
the
we're
bills
sitting, yeah, everything's
in the glacier.
in place.
Are those paid for? The loan closed already, but did we do a draw ahead of?
We did
All of that,
a
so-
pre-draw of about 2.5 million for those items that he just discussed. Which is why you'll see a very large amount in our checking account.
Looks
About to be spent.
Yeah, well, in the next 6 months.
Adam, anything to add?
on the operation startup.
We're getting there.
Okay. Yeah, how's it going?
Out here.
Adam, you tell us, how you feeling about it? You got a new car, you driving it and everything,
It's
figuring out the collection and everything.
It's real good, yeah, we're getting the solids handling component of the operation figured out. It's drastically different than what we dealt with at the SBR. You think about what these membranes are doing, they're holding back all of the solids that were in the waste stream that have ended up in our ponds, so. Solids handling is something we've kind of had to adjust our operation a little bit on, but we're getting close and our SCI is about out of here. I say that with good vibes.
Yeah, you're wading into the pool a little bit right now because hotels opened up on the mountain's doing good numbers right now. And so that's the next tier, start seeing these occupancy rates start going up. But then it's a big one, starting at 26. I mean, numbers are there, so.
We're seeing the flows increase steadily, so yeah.
Everything's working well as they.
We're getting good load to the plant, and that's helping, working with James a lot on fine tuning our oxygen, it's that same story, and just kind of working on a bunch of the stuff with RCI. Light at the end of the tunnel.
Week from today, it's a different game. Right.
Adam's alluding, we have a membrane now that basically, for all practical purposes, keeps all solids in the plant. Historically, the SBR was passing 20 to 30 milligrams per liter to the pond. We had less solids production on the biosolid side, and that centrifuge project has gone from we'll figure it out someday to let's figure it out. Yeah, we're gonna be putting together a project package to get that installed. The press that we have over there now, Adam just installed the last belt for it, and we can't get another one.
We've been looking.
They've been looking desperately, but so it's we're also producing way more solids than we ever have in the past too, which is typical with a plant like this. So you want it to be a little bit drier content, especially with the composting and stuff. So typically from what they were producing with the biosolids in the batch plant, they're double or triple. So we're going to generate a lot more. And it needs to be in a position where we have a lot more ability to get rid of it, because like the nurseries and stuff want a certain quality of compost and all that stuff for the bulk. So there won't be a shortage in that, but it could trigger other projects on the solid handling side in the future to expand our capabilities to be able to do that. How many bins you got now for 4 or 5?
Yeah.
4. So, and they're kind of small, so either you get bigger bins or upgrade that stuff. So we got some equipment that we'll have to look at here in the near future, but that centrifuge, it needs professional installation to ensure that it's installed correctly so it'll operate correctly, because you're spinning a piece of equipment at a very high RPM. So it's out of balance or any kind of vibration, then it'll shut down. So it was part of the original design. It was a bid alternate that we all elected not to award on bid day because we were trying to bring the total project cost down to something we could afford. So that was 5 years ago now. In the interim, we did a new estimate. If you did go out and get it done later outside the project, we were about 1.8 million. You all took a portion of that to BizRad and asked for funding, given basically funding for the centrifuge itself. Ron worked the agreement for that purchase, and that's why that's showing up in March. But we also need a polymer skid. We need some plumbing, electrical work done, concrete pedestals to mount the centrifuge on, rip out the old filter press. So it's a little project. Deviation requests. So last month we talked about DEQ saying they want to get out of your business on the gallons per day for SFE. That's your deal to manage.
we wrote a tech memo for Johnny's purposes. Suggesting that be set at 82. I don't know that you all need to go through a formal acceptance of that today or anything, but
I would like to, so it's on, not today, because I don't have the technical memo in the packet, but I would like to officially make that recommendation to the board and have that adopted, as that's what will be in the future, so.
Yeah, it'd be good to do a brief narrative on the impact. Number one, we go from 107 down to 82 now. The impact and what we're kind of accepting for responsibility in it as well, you know. It's like they're definitely on our plate now to make these technical decisions, which isn't a bad thing, but maybe just let everybody understand what happens once we adopt this. The good and the bad, so.
yeah.
And again, can I interrupt? I'd prefer just that we do it in the form of a resolution because we will now be setting a policy, not complying with DEQ's evaluations. So that will leave us a trail of, in the future, if we need to up it or down or reduce it based on what we learn from more data, we can amend that resolution and reference the one we approve in 2025 so that we can keep track of it into the future.
It'd be good to know where we are today. In that 107 to 82 range and where the trending's been for maybe a 5-year limit. When that seemed to make sense, you just want to see where you're going. Are you going up or down? And I just think about when Terry, you did that report on, we changed the table on workforce housing 3.01. Seems like we're a little different now from some of the numbers I heard back then when Tom Williams and Dick and I were looking over those policy changes. So it'd be good to know where that is.
Well, the rates have had an effect on water usage, so the numbers are going down.
The data was about 75. gallons.
What's that?
The data is about 75 gallons per day per SFE. That's what was given to DEQ.
Okay.
And DEQ sat on it for 5 months and then said, actually, we don't want any part of this anymore, which was unforeseeable, especially after putting the screws to us so hard in 2020 on the 107.3.
What about the trending? You know, that's interesting for me. You're trending down in water use, but we extracted the landscape, which is one I'm sure you'll see a reduction in as you pop those rates in there. Is the trending going down?
Yeah, it has because of I&I reductions that the staff has done.
Yeah.
Water rate increases, so folks using less water, and I also believe it's we haven't had a truly wet year since 2018. A real, you know, like a top 10 percentile kind of wet year.
Probably give Kristen Gardner a little shout out there. They had people over in the post office giving out brochures and water saving things for years. So I think it's been a team effort, but it's good to see it dropping down.
Yeah, we did, it doesn't have the complete year yet, but up until mid-December, you can see on our total annual flow rate. It's quite a bit less than the last couple of years.
I mean, if the board's going to adopt an 82, the board should know what the trend is. I mean, if it's going up and we're at 75, I don't know. You want it at 82. That's the only question I'd have, but.
Set resolutions, would that suggest like looking at it annually or what's the?
It'd be great to know on it.
Like, I mean, I think we should.
Yeah, that's
Behind that.
something that we're planning on doing is this is looked at. Just like we do anything else, we look at it every year and if we need to adjust every 3 to 5, then we do that. It's not something that you'd want to adjust every year because then you're just something back and
Sure.
forth. So,
But for forecasting future expansion, we'd have to have fresh eyes on it at least every year to know if we're
Yep.
trending correctly or not.
Yep.
It's a little tighter than I thought, the 75 to 82. And that's because you do have some properties or communities that are substantially lower. I mean, way down that they're pulling that average down.
Well, 82 was just a suggestion.
Yeah, it's just interesting how
You can debate that if you want to set it at 85 or 90.
No. It's all fine. It's just, I think it's something that we should implement a tracking procedure on a yearly basis. I think it's just good data. It's great to see what's working. If Is it the rates that are working on the water? Is it the ionized? Is it Kristen over at the post office? I don't know.
Yeah.
Scott, I've been stringing you out so we can get Mace here.
Okay. Ryan, you mentioned like a 5-year trend, I'd like to see it even
Sure.
bigger than that, just having information. I mean, there's some success stories in that, but also
I can go all the way back to 1993.
bring it.
You know what? It would be good. You know, again, I'm getting back to Dick with the housing trust and the workforce housing, and we modified that up substantially. At the time, there were a number of projects that we were in transition. I know of a couple in particular that had 5-gallon flush toilets, and we were using them as our database. And we were coming up with 100 gallons per day for SFE. Well, they went to a 1.25. I mean, it would be something I'd like to maybe revisit and say, is that the proper threshold? This is a huge tool for you, David. It's huge. And if you can come in with ways to look at that, we need to work cooperatively. But that's one of my favorite things about that data point is I know a guy in the line that heard me say, you got to take these out of there, man. You got to get those toilets out of there. You got hundreds and hundreds of them, Golden Eagle and Molo. So it's a tool that we should be using. That's kind of the board level. What do we incentivize and penalize? What's that?
I would just add, I think it's especially important now because of how we're using the SFEs relative to where we were using them at the beginning and the type of housing we're more prone to be creating. We're really trying to hone in, as you can see in the annexation petition, on more ownership housing. We're really looking to include more single family housing, and the upshot is, you know, at the end of the day, it's housing that looks a lot less like any separate category of workforce or some other kind of housing. It's just housing where people live, like the rest of the district. And so I really welcome this opportunity to be able to take another look down.
That's great. And I think as we talk about it, include you in the conversation, because it's a double-edged sword. I think the data was taken off of the peak and then concessions were made, but there were other advantages to this softening that curve, and that's how it had to work. We had 100 and we had 65, and we had to soften that curve, and the only way we could soften the curve was upping the per SFE allocation. But back then, the housing was the entity that were, a couple of the entities, they were shutting down on April 20th. You're going to be year round now, but you're going to be far more cognizant of your water use. But now you're going to be year round. So
And much more housing is paying by meter. It's they're individual ratepayers that are paying their own bills. So to Terry's point, we'll be much more concerned.
Great point. Great point. That'll make you think twice about that half-hour shower. And my favorite is the heating. When you include the heating in there, the windows are all open to control the temperature. That's it. The old dorms going to Big Sky, you have garbage bags hanging out the window for refrigeration. Yeah. I remember it well. Al does too. Okay.
So we'll prepare a tech memo to walk you through historical data and
That's great.
and lead hopefully to an adoption, because like that meeting last week with the Canyon, there were people wanting to know exactly how many SFEs are in phase 2. You can't calculate that until you set that. How many GPD for SFE?
And I want to add to that, you know, because I've also noticed a lot of people, you know, just holding on to that. These are highly estimated numbers that we're using to project. We're never going to know what flow is actually going to be until we see it, but we're using it to project. So they're not stamped in stone when we say this is what it is. This is just what it is by the data that we're looking, the historical data. So in our business, we're looking at historical data to plan for today, to project for tomorrow. And so these are numbers that are just highly estimated and, you know, can be 99% accurate, but in just what we're seeing just in the last few years, you know, a more stabilized graph versus when I show you 93, you can see this upward trend, and we're adding roughly 60,000 a year to our flow. But then you come in and button up the system, you make the system more reliable, you have less leaks, you have all this stuff, and then you're just really clamping that down. And the best system I had was less than
10% water loss and 72 per person was that number. So, you know, you get that water loss number down, you dial everything in and you keep that there, you get a lot more stable system. But
It's interesting, and Terry, and again, other board members can remember back, I agree with everything you said about projecting. But we had, I remember at the time of the montage, everyone was looking for data on how this was all gonna work and trying to project such a large property. Well, we get the data on the Summit Hotel, which everybody has. By the way, the data that's out there for comparable properties is critical. You take a hotel versus a single family home and those peaks, and of course, if you're going to your peaks. I would just say this is a new tier for the board to evaluate because you have so many projects coming at you right now. And if you want to make those adjustments, you want to get the house in order.
Yeah.
But you do have tools. And Ron used to be great at gathering all that data. And you helped utilize it at different times. It's there. I just don't know if we ever evaluated it on a regular basis. And I think it's something that we should get into understanding where we are with these properties. And I think you're going to find the properties that are incentivized and or penalized are the ones that are going to show the greatest change. The hotel, I know the Summit Hotel was just all over the fact that their pool was leaking like crazy. I mean, the hunt is just tough, and they react and they get in there and they start tracking them, but it takes that, I don't know if you call it an incentive to cut costs or a penalty because you're going to get nicked. So you've done a good job with it. Let's figure a way to compile that in a way that we can, we don't dilute the data. And I think housing, workforce housing is a good one to look at, revisit, and see if we made progress with those changes.
I haven't shared my new format for reporting. It's not going to be the GM report anymore. It's going to be the monthly district operating report. I'll have a lot more data in there. So I'm with you.
You cut your board packet. Johnny's first couple of board packets had a 3 in front of it, like 320, 340. There could be anything in that 340 that I missed, but he's got that down now. So great. All right.
Couple other quick updates. Freeze Booster Station. Just want to make sure you all understand you've parked design of that, but told us to proceed with finishing the permitting, the land agreement with Spanish Peaks in the county. Provide some funding assistance. We're going to pursue some other avenues besides just SRF to try to get that station funded and build it eventually. And then your immediate YC1 pump replacement project is part of that. So that's what we're doing there. Eventually we'll come back to that because we want to get that 30 million gallons or so full capacity of that pipeline. And then the last one would be before we talk Canyon, the water master plan. Zach's got a amendment to you. So what we scoped to do initially was catch up with all the development that has occurred since the last time that model was built, which is a lot. But now you've got 3 or 4 systems potentially coming on board that you want to know what that looks like and how it ties into your distribution system, what size of those pipes, where the pressure is going to be, fire flows, storage, all that stuff. Makes sense to have that included in the model, and in our opinion, so maybe we could discuss that on that January's meeting as well.
Maybe it would be a good opportunity to evaluate the topic we came up in the Canyon meeting the other day. Do a good job at the agendas. We just never let you get through them. Unlike these, which were going almost too fast for those people that drove up for Ron's lunch. I think it would be great to evaluate in detail and confirm paper water at complete build out, and at what tiers do we have it 100% at complete build out if we expand the plan? That'd be great to confirm in writing.
So you're looking at me, but it'd be Julie Merritt.
Julie is working on that
contract with
Bruce Flicker is.
finish that.
Yep.
And give you a report or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she's gonna write
It's
a
understandable.
technical
You
memo.
can check that box. So it's gonna be a topic that's all about the data right now. We just have to have accurate data. The other thing as we talk about it, Johnny, these are coming up in passing when we had the ISRAD, and I think Danny's on right now. We talked about the booster station and that project and this and that. and you said, Scott, very clearly that, you got to look at the next reuse option. Is that a correct priority for this board to understand? We need the next reuse option, and we should basically tier these in budget and efficiency and everything that goes with them. Mace, I'm gonna piggyback on that. Years ago, you had some great looking plans for hole number 15 at Two Moons and serving a dual purpose for firelight and all kinds of things that went into that. Is that something that we would want to explore as a board, what our next feasible or reasonable reuse? The snowmaking is going to be great. All this is going to be great with snowmaking. It's going to be fantastic. But you got us a little nervous with the booster station and capacity. And if we get one of those wet years or peak flows or whatever, does that need to be a priority? That's what came out of the meeting the other day.
Yeah, I'll put that, because 3 or 4 years ago, I'll put in Beaker's head a little bit, see if he likes it.
I thought it was good looking. Suggestion for your meetings, put times like 1 to 1:30 or 1 to 1:15 this, and have a bell go off. We were all over the board.
I'll herd you completely next time, and as long as you give me that authority, I get to.
It wasn't
boss
just
you
me.
around.
There was a guy sitting somewhere over there too that had some ideas, so that's all.
Yeah.
And just trying to update the board at the same time, so they go, what the hell are they talking about here?
I'm all for, whatever hole 15 is. I don't know how much disposal that was. The one we can't forget about is Firelight Meadows as well. There's permitting, there's probably 2-3 years of permitting in either of those.
Yes.
Keep that in mind from the day you say go,
Yeah.
to the day you're actually disposing is maybe 5 years.
Yeah, it's not a silver bullet 2 years from now.
Yeah, see, I don't think we're looking for the silver bullet 2 years from now. I think it's basically an analysis based on costs too at the same time. You've rattled my cage on, how expensive that's going to be. We just have to be careful of choosing an option that's going to be 5 times the price per gallon to dispose. I mean,
I think it ties into our reuse management plan and that's where it starts. And then what options are we gonna pursue with that?
Yeah.
We're talking purple pipe and installing purple pipe and just all those options that we've talked about that we're gonna need, all of them. So it started, we just need to, it is our next big project.
it's not about a choice, it's about the best choice.
Yeah.
The ratepayers. It really is the best choice environmentally and for the financial.
Okay, Kenny?
Yeah, using that as a transition. The reason the canyon, it was kind of came into fruition was groundwater discharge in the canyon is a much easier lift than groundwater discharge in the meadow. West Fork is impaired for nutrients present day. Canyon has an algae pending impairment, but not nutrient impaired. And thus canyon discharge was kind of that potential silver bullet, especially with pulling septics off the line and that nutrient reduction. So know that the canyon is potentially that silver bullet and is 3 years in the making or a 3-year head start. So just to translate that context, I'm going to highlight 3 bullets from the meeting. Takeaway 1 was translate into SFEs from a treatment need, kind of canyon's phasing of when do they need it, and then on a disposal, how much can they provide, and do that all in an SFE fashion, and probably marry that up with what AE2S is doing behind the scenes for Big Sky Water and Sewer District as they project a phase 2 plant. Construction starts X date, like help that translation from a canyon perspective and coordinate. Something I need to work with the Canyon District is, can the canyon afford to prepay for treatment? Like, we identified that you have capacity now, it's the cost that you're carrying right now. And if Canyon can prepay, that probably works better for Big Sky Water and Sewer District versus pay as you go. So I need to explore that with the Canyon District of, they already got a challenging affordability problem. Like, we're looking for money to make it to where it's $150 a month sewer bill. But if they're prepaying for their full build out, that becomes even more a lift. But we're gonna find those financial mechanisms to where that might be an option for worth discussing. So I'm teeing up that kind of conversation. I think behind the scenes, I've had a concept of like, if Canyon needs 100,000 gallons per day, whatever that SFE conversion is, if they needed that day one, they'd probably prepay for that day one. But if we're protecting capacity for 200,000 gallons per day, would they pay as they go? And that's a whole joint committee discussion that I see probably is going to be a topic for the next meeting and understanding those. But I'll make sure we're talking about it at the Canyon board, which is this afternoon. So give them the same recap. To help accomplish that, I'd say the Canyon's focus in the coming year is the TIF. The Canyon area is a poster child for what these targeted economic development districts are intended for. It's when there's deficient infrastructure that no individual developer can really afford to carry for the community. That's what these TEDs are for. And we've initiated the conversation with Gallatin County. It has to fundamentally be a county developed district, and they seem to have the appetite. We just need to walk them through the math, the need, the steps to get to that formation. The initial numbers show that a TED district could potentially carry as much of the burden as, say, the 1% resort tax. It has 10 to 30 million type funding capacity, but a lot of details to figure out there. But that's the near-term focus to get to where the Canyon starts to be an asset to the community. Like, the community's been carrying the Canyon to get it to this point. Knowing this tool, it could start to alleviate some funding challenges. So that's probably a coming year push, in addition to advancing to 60% design and securing a contractor and all that. But funding is the challenge, so that's the focus in my mind. That's my update.
Good update. You just distilled down a lot of rabbit holes. Al, you might have a couple points just on that, what we would call them deadhead inventory, or we should probably call it dormant SFEs.
I got deadhead in my head now, so I
know dormant SFEs, we talked a lot about that the other day.
Yeah, well, we talked about it a lot the other day. We talked a lot about it in our rate study meeting, and in recognition that we, as a district, are building plans, we're maintaining assets for some properties that are waiting to connect. And so we're going to be taking, from a rate perspective, a harder look at should the properties that are in the district that are not connected to the system yet be contributing a larger cost to the maintenance and operation of a facility that's waiting for them to connect. Now you can make the argument, well, you're not connected, and I use the example, when I owned my first lot in Big Sky and got a sewer bill, I thought, what the heck is this? But now that I've been here longer and I understand the magnitude of the investment into a facility that has to retain the capacity for those vacant lots, but isn't generating, in my opinion, sufficient revenue to cover what we're bearing. And so who pays for that? Well, I guess it's either some of the ratepayers that are connecting are bearing some of that cost, or we're finding other sources. And so we're not saying that that's necessarily, or I'm not saying that that may be an equal cost, but it's sure the disparity now, in my opinion, is too great. So that's one thing that we're looking at. So when Mace talked about the concept of prepaying, it's the same issue, because if we, as a district, go ahead and expand further, and yet have no real timeline or real understanding of when those properties may connect, that's just putting additional burden on the district to maintain an asset for what Brian cleverly came up with, the deadhead inventory, hey, we've got to preserve these SFEs for you, but we don't know when you're going to connect. You can use some examples, but our district's been here, what'd you say, you can go back to 93 with data, and there's still vacant lots in the method. And so we've been holding SFEs for those lots to connect someday at a pretty substantial cost. And so that's an issue that I sort of mentioned in an email that we'd be looking at as we go forward. It's something that's being discussed at the rate analysis level. But it's also something we're trying to be aware of as we consider annexations, because we want those entities potentially annexing them, that there may be a greater cost to remain vacant than there once was.
Great summary. And I just want to clarify, this is not unique to the canyon. It's the pressure that's been put on the district. We're what, 40% still? 40% of unbuilt lots? Are we 60% through our obligation?
There's about 400 vacant lots total.
Well, not just vacant lots, but commitments, obligation SFEs that are out there.
I think it was 1,000 when we did.
Yeah, 1,000 SFEs that we've got.
Obligated. Infill or deadhead or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, now I'm gonna get down to brass tacks. You can't have that since we have some of the big hitters that have more than 1,000 probably SFEs. But the point is that we have got to have a system in place to identify the cost of obligation SFEs. Let's call them obligation SFEs, not necessarily vacant lot SFEs, because we've got to maintain the capacity of the plan for all outstanding obligations. Does that make sense? Obligation SFEs. That's where we're going with this. It's a lot more than 1,000.
So the 1,000 was what I would call infill, like people who've been sitting on a lot
Sure.
since day one that haven't developed it, that we don't have identified by some other means. You're right, there's a ton of other SFEs out there that we know are coming that haven't been developed yet, but this would be like that homeowner that.
Sure, and that person who's on a little coyote lot that's been sitting there forever, there's maintenance that goes with it. But I think that this is a really good point to make. We need to separate or bifurcate the two. What's the carrying cost of obligation SFEs of the plant? And what's the carrying cost of a vacant lot? That makes sense? Then we start knowing when we evaluate things for the canyon. I didn't want the board to think this was just about the canyon. It's kind of like the light bulb went off and said, what if we do a plan expansion now? And I'm going to use the term, we double the size of the plan. And we double the size so that we can accommodate the canyon and we can take on a firelight and we can do more with the housing trust. Let's say we do that. Well, I'm going to say we may have 6,000 or 7,000 SFEs that are now available at the plant that would be in that quote obligation bucket. There's an expense associated with that. Does that all make sense now? That, and I don't know how you shift that burden, but I mean, when you're sitting on 1,000 SFEs and a lot of maintenance that goes in that plant, we just got to think how we make this as attractive as possible for the ratepayer, or as fair as possible with the ratepayers. It's a big deal. A lot of new stuff today.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I redirect the conversation while we have Mace?
Sure. So he's not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, he's a slippery kind of fella.
Okay, Mace, go ahead. Your show.
So also in the list of things I think that need to be discussed here at this point is the fact that the canyon needs the resolution for using the alternate project delivery contract provisions of law. They need it done and signed and agreed to by Big Sky this meeting because they need to approve it this afternoon because they needed to get to the county to preserve the ARPA funds by the end of the year. I think those statements are all correct, but I'm sure Mace will educate us all further. And I would tell you with regard to that resolution, I've looked at it. I don't think that we needed pre-notice for the board to authorize the signing of that resolution. Because it's just the first step in a process of saying, if we use this alternative, here are the steps that need to be done in the future. But since Mace is the resident expert, and he's now in the room, correct me, educate us, tell us what you need.
Yeah, on the resolution, so the canyon has already signed the Gallatin County contract that in my mind was the December deadline. But I very well could be wrong, and if you guys could approve the resolution, I was gonna discuss it at the Canyon Board meeting. I don't know that that's the hinge point of that funding. I assumed it was the contract the Canyon District already signed and resolved. but I'd love to expedite this and eliminate that variable.
She's giving you yes for an answer.
Yeah.
So
Let's do it.
basically, we talked this morning and it was this, can I sign this today? And do we need to, because it wasn't included in an action item, but her answer is yes, and that's good for me.
Yeah, let's,
So nice to have Susan on board.
Susan, for your records, it's resolution 2403 for the district.
Okay, thank you. And Mace, is there anything more you think this board needs to know about this first resolution? That's really what I was tossing the softball to you.
yeah, so for the softball that I missed, I used to play.
You're still in the canyon in your mind getting up here.
Yeah, the joint committee is tracking this, that the project, we want to advance it under what I call design build, kind of this alternative procurement where you advance the design towards construction drawings with a pre-selected contractor. So this puts this in motion as an option to procure a contractor in parallel to the design. We're not selecting a contractor at all. It's just between the two districts, it's a resolution that authorizes that pathway.
And I've done design build twice in my career, so works out pretty good. Worked out pretty good.
Primary value is expediting schedule and honestly nailing down costs, getting a contractor secured, protecting that contractor a little bit. So our biggest variable on the project is what is the real number, and working with the contractor to solidify that.
Good stuff. Any questions for me?
I got a question for either of you. So like with the DEQ's relaxed the whole, the 82 and kind of forming an opinion on that number for letting us manage it. Would they ever be open to us managing the availability in our plant? Meaning we're not having to build for 30 years out, we're building for more just in time or 5 or 10 years out.
I think that's essentially what they're doing with that, is saying you're now responsible for managing your own capacity and metrics of how you do that.
Because we've historically said we need to build for, all the way through and have the availability for those empty lots and so forth. And it's an interesting way to look at it as well.
Be a part of the solution that we're talking about, an obligation.
Yeah.
And I agree with Scott. I just want y'all to know that as DEQ giveth, they can taketh away.
Fair enough. But it goes into our capital, just some of our planning, and it's a lot to consider there, I think, is carve out the next 5-10 years and Terry's favorite, depreciation and all that type of stuff and funding. It goes a lot into that as well.
Yeah, most states, they don't get in your kitchen that deeply, the way they have been for decades. Susan's right though, doesn't mean regime change doesn't occur and somebody else thinks that they should be that deep in the kitchen again.
Well, do we technically have 4.5 or 4 years of some similar regime?
Hopefully, we have 40 years of them not micromanaging utilities.
It's a big shift the other way quickly, so it'd be, but we have to work on what our plans look like, based on the current thinking, it feels like.
Good point. Anything else on the topic? Susan, anything else you want to share with the board on this?
Not me. I'm good at interrupting when I need to.
Okay, that's good for me. You better get behind the wheel here pretty soon too, if you're coming up. All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve
Resolution.
and sign.
2403.
Okay. Motions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Nick.
I have one, but go ahead, yours is probably more.
Precisely what are we approving?
It's at no risk or financial responsibility to the board, but it's basically saying we have a joint effort for pursuing budget for this project. That
We're establishing a joint effort to procure a contractor. Like, there's an ordinance that the two districts are agreeing upon, and this is a methodology that we could use to implement that procurement. It's not procuring the contractor. There's a whole process there still to do across the next 6 months to 12 months, but it's just.
what I heard you say was the goal was the budgeting, to start getting our arms around an accurate budget. And Dick, after sitting through just a couple of these meetings, the budget's a pretty darn important thing after what we just went through. that's why. So we could,
Thank you.
okay,
And my only comment is that before you sign it, we need to spell your first name correctly.
thank you.
I think you're very intelligent, but I'm not gonna start calling you brain.
I was about to hand it to Amy right now, but,
Remind me to send you that meeting.
it's an autofill or something, I don't know. Okay.
I didn't write it, so.
So it's a habit now, I guess it's a name.
Somebody else thinks you're really smart.
Got it. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. All right. Now, Northwest Energy Land Agreement, little curveball there.
Yeah. I'll be brief. Last email conversation I had with Roy, everything's tracking with the county procedure. One unintended consequence, I guess I'll call it, one of the steps of the procedure is that any applicant needs to have their taxes paid in full at the time that they review the application, which for an entity like Northwestern Energy is a little bit more challenging because they are on, what is the term? I think I still have this open. They're centrally assessed. So that means all of their properties within Gallatin County are on one tax bill. And so for this little project we're doing over here, they're gonna have to pay their entire Gallatin County taxes in advance. So they're working on getting that done because that's obviously not part of their normal step. And then I believe that's the last thing they need. At some point, they'll be coming up requesting us to execute Mylars, which I believe we've already got the approvals for that. It's just another step at the appropriate time, but that's where things sit. So it's in the county process and they're following the steps, and I will let the board know when they ask Brian to sign the Mylars to complete that submittal. That's where we stand. You enjoyed brief of a summary, right?
What's that?
I gave too brief a summary.
All right. Let's just get us that land. By the way, it's a 2-year anniversary since we started negotiating this week with the BSOA.
And that's right. It's
Christmas Eve, we were working on this. And they know happy. All right, we got that covered. Developments and subdivisions, Johnny.
None for this meeting.
All right.
I even double checked with Amy. I said, are you sure?
Yeah, that's always a good thing to do, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. How about legal? It's great to have Susan on. Johnny, you want to take this because you're going to be the guy getting us teed up for hopefully some resolution at the next meeting or consideration.
We are working on complex agreements. They're now both are back in our court, so they are starting to be reviewed, and then I will catch up with Susan when I get back after the first of the year, and we will be very busy in the very beginning of January. So,
Susan, anything you have on those agreements?
Nope, both of them came back in red line after the packets went out. So I don't want anybody sitting at the board meeting to think this time it's my fault. It has been before, but it is not this time.
And Johnny, can I assume, I asked the question on the cold smoke agreement, similar process for Spanish Peaks at some point?
yeah, I think what's best, what I did for the policy and procedures is to write a summary and also provide the document so you can read the summary, get the quick synopsis of what the discussion is. And with anything, it's going to be with our recommendations or what our thought process is. So you guys are aware and can provide that feedback. Because the next, to me, the agreement has to be 100% before we move forward with the resolution. That is not the place to bring it to resolution, then continue to have discussions, because every time there's a change, it's another delay before you can have another read. So,
Well, maybe the best thing to do would see while you're out of pocket for a little bit there, Susan, you can continue to work with Gina. And then even if it's a red line version, a lot of these items will be board decision.
Yep.
So if you feel as though we're at a board decision and the attorneys are going back and forth, let's get a red line version, as clean a red line as you can get. And that's where it comes into, we get a little early, study those red lines, make sure that we're trying to just get this to where we can have an action item for a vote on it or a modification. So,
It sounds like a good plan, and just to let my editing committee may get, pinged during the holiday.
I figured,
You all know that Dick's my editing,
I'm
right?
looking right at him right now.
Yes, because
Dick,
he's amazingly good at making what I write more clear, so we appreciate it.
I thought you were gonna say more better.
More better. More better.
Have we accepted the Spanish Peaks annex request?
Yeah,
Yeah, we did
we
that,
accepted the annexation request and now we have post-smoke annexation request.
Okay.
Yeah, we accepted.
So then we get into the agreements. So be great to see if we could move in a parallel path on this between now and the next meeting. If nothing else, see if we can get some of these things off our plate. Got a lot more coming. Anything else on those, Susan?
No, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Let's see, new business, new development subdivision. Yeah, there wasn't any development in subdivision. Water connection permits, how are we doing just for basic permits compared to year over year? Or how did, better said, how did 2024 finish up?
And we have permitted more this year than we did last year,
Okay,
but it's really slowed down.
Okay.
So,
all right. I think, when a diminishing returns on some of the costs that go into this right now. So, all right, anything else? General correspondence, anything that the board wants to cover? Next meeting, Tuesday, January 21st. How's everybody look for that? Because it's gonna be a lot on the plate after the new year. Everybody all right?
Good. Yep.
Okay. Motion to adjourn then. Favor? I don't know if you have to take a vote. Some they do, some they don't. I don't know. Just tell me what to do, John. All right, we're adjourned.
It's more solid that way.
Yeah.
It's really done.
I know. So.